Agentic AI is not providing the value the technology companies promised. Are we jumping on the bandwagon and going nowhere? Let's talk about it. So welcome to Dave is Not AI, the channel where we take a critical, no-nonsense look at artificial intelligence. I'm Dave Linthicum, an AI expert with over 30 years of experience in the enterprise AI field. I've authored or co-authored 17 books on technology topics. I have dozens of courses on LinkedIn Learning, and I'm a top AI influencer and thought leader. Here we delve into what works, what doesn't, and what's just plain ridiculous when it comes to AI, providing honest and objective analysis. If that interests you, please subscribe, like, and comment. Let's get started. So unless you've been under a rock for the last couple of years, obviously there's a tremendous amount of hype out there right now around Agentic AI. And Agentic AI, by the way, is kind of an older concept that was reconstituted for the generative AI revolution in the AI, everybody rethinking and relooking at AI as a possible or potential business changer for their enterprise. And what Agentic AI is, at its essence, is just a deployment architecture where you're leveraging autonomous agents that are able to work independently. And typically they have some sort of AI capability as well. They're either running small language models, which are innate to the agent itself, or they're reaching out to large language models, things like ChatGPT, things like that. And obviously it's very adaptable around different configurations because we can run agents in a distributed fashion. We can cluster them on the same machine. We can put them in a peer-to-peer relationship or a subordinate relationship with some sort of a master agent. We can bind them into orchestration systems. We can do lots of things with them. And it's not necessarily new technology, but certainly the interest in it right now is new. And there's a lot of hype out there. And I think people are getting a little confused. So at the end of the day, we're trying to take a look at what's working with this technology and what seems to be, very much hype driven. And my concern is that people are leveraging this technology too much for areas where it's not necessarily going to be affected. So despite the promises that many are making around Agentic AI offerings, they're overhyped with, Gartner estimating that only about 130 out of thousands of vendors provide genuine Agentic AI capabilities. So whether they're doing something called AI washing, and where existing technologies like chatbots, RPAs, robotic process automation, which is a type of AI tool, and AI assistants are rebranded as Agentic AI without meaningful additions. So this is kind of minor fraud, I guess. I wouldn't call it fraud. It's not illegal. Obviously, when cloud computing, started to emerge, 12, 15 years ago, everybody participated in cloud washing. So in other words, everything that they were selling suddenly was a cloud solution. And that was kind of marketecture at the time. And we're doing the same thing with generative AI and certainly the same thing with Agentic AI. But people are going very much taking this hype to another level. They're renaming the companies, renaming their products, AgentForce, for example, which used to be Salesforce, and probably overemphasizing how this technology should be leveraged. And it's getting kind of to a silly level. And I think it's time that we normalize what this technology really does, the business value that it's able to provide with, what are the potential values that we can find out there. In other words, not using the technology for technology's sake, but actually looking for the problem domains where this technology may provide some applicable value. And I think we're finding that in many cases it's overused. And when it is used, it's not used properly. And this is leading to a lot of confusion, a lot of failures, and certainly a lot of wasted money. So let's kind of get into what's working and also I think focusing on what's not, because I think that's a big issue right now. So performance issues would be kind of the first thing to focus on. Carnegie Mellon University and Salesforce research reveal poor performance of multi-step tasks completed by AI agents. So the success rates hover around 30 to 35% for such tasks. And even top performing models like Gemini 2.5 Pro could only completely finish 30.3% of its tasks and partial score of a 39.3. So in other words, they're unable to perform at the rate I think we need them to perform. And you think about it, that's going to be built into the architecture. If you're using distributed agents, and processing is occurring in different memory spaces. They have to communicate via the networks. Those sorts of things have to communicate through APIs. They're not going to be able to perform as well as monolithic systems where they're tightly coupled together. And I think that's going to be a trade-off with all this stuff. Now, obviously, you can throw processor speed at it and memory capacity at it, but that's just going to increase costs. So failures included skipping instructions like messaging colleagues, problems with handling user interface elements, such as pop-ups, and in some cases, deceptive behavior like renaming another user to meet a task parameter. So what's happening was almost seeing hallucinations in how they carry out the tasks. And so in other words, if these agents are given the objective to always process information with a certain amount of speed, then they may figure out that they can skip tasks very much like humans, and you're not necessarily having them accomplish the objectives that they're set out to accomplish because they're trying to get around some of the architectural limitations. So who'd have saw that coming? Well, I did, but it's something we're going to have to face. So now we have benchmarks to see how these things are running. So Carnegie Mellon University created and the agent company created a benchmark to evaluate AI agents for typical office tasks like coding, web browsing, and communications. And the results indicated substantial improvement is needed. Salesforce developed a CRMArena-Pro to assess customer relationship management related capabilities. Models performed better on directed scenarios, around 58% success for single turn interactions, but dropped to around 35% for multi-turn tasks. In other words, just getting into more complex use of agent kind of tasks would lead more often to failure. Also got to remember that the people doing the benchmarks aren't objective third parties. They're selling technology, are selling services in the space. So you kind of consider that as well. So I wouldn't pay too much attention to the benchmarks, and also because you're going to have to benchmark the use of agentic AI for your particular problem domain to figure out what kind of performance you're going to get. If you look at other benchmarks that are created around generic types of problem domains and test scenarios, that's almost never going to replicate the way that you're using this technology in the enterprise. And that's not just with agentic AI, that's with everything. So security and privacy concerns. Agentic AI tools require access to sensitive information to function, creating privacy and security risks. Many models demonstrate non-zero confidentiality awareness, a significant limitation for corporate adoption. So improper implementations could result in emails sent to the wrong users or mishandling of proprietary data. So if we're going to trust these things to carry out tasks for us, to carry out business functions, then they're going to have to deal with security. In many cases, for example, agents working with physicians, you're dealing with PII information, personally identifiable information, and you're trusting them they're not going to mishandle that data and they're not going to email it to the wrong person. You're having your blood test information, emailed to a mass mail list. Could be results out of this. And so if we're trusting these agents to carry out very sensitive tasks, we have to be able to trust them. And so in many cases, we're seeing unpredictable behavior for them because we're having all these things coordinate and run together and assess, in essence, they haven't been tested. And we're trying to see how they behave for the first time. So if you're leveraging this technology, that's going to be a risk. And I would do a tremendous amount of security testing before we deploy these things. I think we're building them too quick and fast. We're not necessarily understanding how they're going to behave as they learn over time. And we're putting ourselves and our information at risk. So, and the failures are starting to ramp up now as well. Gartner predicts by 2027, more than 40% of agentic AI projects will likely be canceled due to cost. They're very expensive. Unclear ROI, poor risk controls. Still, Gartner predicts that by 2028, the agents will autonomously make 15% of the daily work decisions, and 33% of enterprise software applications will include agentic capabilities. And we're seeing that now with kind of the AI washing, which is leading to some agentic capabilities. In other words, they're going to have to come up and build their products around the use of AI agents at some particular time if they're advertising it as a function. So we're going to see that it's going to be systemic to lots of the stuff we do. And that's not necessarily needing that functional change. That's in essence, the technology providers, again, using architecture, think that that is the way to sell their technology. And in some cases, they're going to force fit the use of AI agents into their technology. And the problem there is they're going to spend a lot of money on R&D and retesting and things like that, and probably get very little additional functionality out of it for their users. And so their users are going to suffer because the product's in essence going to be frozen in place while the technology providers reagent enables the system, and probably for no good business reason. And we have adoption challenges. Despite incremental improvements, industry adoption faces hurdles. Corporate IT remains cautious due to security and low success rate, which we just talked about. Many organizations are stuck in AI pilot hell, unable to scale beyond the experimental stages. And I'm seeing that as well. People are, talking to me about the use of agentic AI and even the use of generative AI. They can't get out of the pilot stage and getting to something that's going to be a workable deployment, something that's able to go into production, because they realize it costs more money, time, and resources for the business to actually get these across the finish line. And we talked about that here before. AI systems, whether it's agentic, generative, machine learning, they can be as much as 5 times the cost of using traditional technology deployment and development approaches. And you have to be able to pay for that. And many organizations, and certainly IT organizations out there, don't have unlimited amounts of cash laying around. They have a budget they have to adhere to. And in many cases, they want to move to AI, but probably can't afford to do it. And when they do move, they get to these very tactical use cases within the AI system, and they don't have the ability or the resources to get them into production. So many of these things just stop in place. They become a failed project, and the project falls by the wayside, and the businesses lose a tremendous amount of money, and they're gaining no value from it. And that's not necessarily a smart thing to do. So what are the takeaways here? Well, current agentic AI implementations have potential, but they're largely immature and often fail due to the complexities, and they fail for business critical tasks. Benchmarks like the Agent Company help track progress, why advancements in security and practical use cases are essential for widespread corporate adoption. So more development is needed to address the success rates, nuanced instructions, and ethical concerns before agentic AI achieves significant ROI or replaces human decision making. So this is where the hype is way ahead of what the enterprises are actually doing with this technology. And I talked about that on my other platforms. And I think that's going to be the case for at least a year, probably 2 years. In other words, we're going to see the hype that's at a high rate, and the actual implementation of it, and the actual value that the technology is able to bring is at a very low rate. And I think we've always had that with any kind of a new technology trend that's occurred, cloud computing being the last one, certainly generative AI. But this is a wider gap. It's probably the widest gap I've ever seen, where the hype is way ahead of the implementations, real implementations of agentic systems, not just agent wash systems, and the ability to bring value back to the business. I think this is great technology, just like any other AI approach, but it's not universally applicable in every problem domain out there. And my guess is probably less than 5% of the problems that I see, business issues, are going to have potential solutions that are going to be good fits for agentic AI. And so that being the case, we're probably not going to find the use cases for it that we think we're going to find. And I think ultimately we need to come to that conclusion and kind of stop the silliness. And I see huge amounts of silliness in this space right now. Well, don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out my other videos on this channel. Also, check out my InfoWorld Cloud Computing blog, my 100 Plus LinkedIn Learning courses, and of course, my Generative AI Architecture course out on Go Cloud Careers. And finally, my latest book, An Insider's Guide to Cloud Computing. So until next week, stay very, very safe. Later.